Today's episode is sponsored by Yellow Funding, the college gap financing partner for today's students. As federal lending tightens and private loans remain out of reach for many families, Yellow steps in to help learners stay enrolled and on track to graduate. Learn how Yellow is supporting retention at yellowfunding.com. That's YELO funding.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and I am back on another episode, which is rare, extremely rare. On a one-on-one, I get a one-on-one, so I'm super excited to bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. Fernando Delgado, president at Lehman College in the boogie down Bronx. Fernando, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Elvin. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. We know that college presidents are very busy, extremely busy this time of year and almost all the time, right? So for you to take out time to talk to us, it's an honor and it's a pleasure. So thank you for being here. Let's get right into it, Fernando. Tell us all about what you do and how do you do it?
Well, I'm pretty much like any public college president. I manage a team of very talented people on my cabinet and our extended cabinet. I'm blessed by having a group of folks that really understand how to do their job. I have a nice mix of people who have grown up in the system, so they know how to navigate the system very well, and they know the environment, and another group of people that have come to our system with a variety of experiences. And so the two kind of create a very positive tension. I think that probably the best part of the equation of leadership at Lehman is that we have a preponderance of faculty and staff who really have a passion for what we do at the institution, really care about our students and making a difference. And a number of them have grown up at the institution. And so, a lot of presidents talk about and then struggle with, this question of commitment and passion for the mission or the purpose of the institution. And I don't have that problem. I mean, people care at Lehman. And more importantly, I think for us in our ecosystem, people in the Bronx care that we are successful because they see us as a beacon. They see us as a meeting place. They see us as a resource. And so as we go, they go, and vice versa. So it's a very positive experience, being president of Lehman College and being located in the Bronx.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that. One of the things that I want to know is, tell us the story about Lehman College. Tell us the scope, students you serve. Tell us all the good stuff about Lehman College.
Lehman College is still, a fairly young school.
Oh, really?
We've been around for most of the 20th century, but we were part of Hunter College up until 1968.
Oh.
We were the Bronx campus of Hunter College. In fact, there's at least two buildings on campus that were built during that time that if you look at the cornerstone that's there, it still says Hunter College. And I used to joke with the president of Hunter College, and I go there with my sanding grit to see if I could wipe it off, but it's very hard because it's a very hard stone. Since 68, we've been the Herbert H. Lehman College. And I think the legacy of Herbert Lehman is an important touchstone for us and informs us. I mean, here was a man who grew up in a quite accomplished family. Obviously, most people of a certain age remember Lehman Brothers as a banking and investment firm. Herbert Lehman took a different path, and he took a path towards elected office and public service and civic engagement. And his career was about that. And maybe happily, maybe it was luck, but the legacy of that level of commitment has resonated with our students. We have a lot of students that end up being elected officials, that work in community-based organizations, that work as staffers for elected officials. And so there is a very good synergy between us and the rest of the public sector. And there's this strong passion for coming to Lehman and then obviously elevating yourself socioeconomically, but at the same time giving back to the Bronx and lifting up the Bronx. Maybe it's unfair to say that we in the Bronx have a chip on our shoulder. But the fact of the matter is, if there's a chip on the shoulder, most people in the Bronx use it as a point of entry, as a point of departure, as a sign of their own commitment. And so Lehman, we spend a lot of time living that. I mean, my mantra when I'm out in the public is that Lehman College is of the Bronx, by the Bronx, and for the Bronx. Uh,
Yes.
and so it is, it is inconceivable for me to think of Lehman outside of the Bronx. And it is equally inconceivable to see the Bronx develop without Lehman being an important part of that journey.
That's beautiful. And it leads me to my next question. Tell us the story of your students. What's the makeup of the student body, the enrollment? Tell us those amazing stories of those
Sure.
amazing students in the Bronx.
I mean, look, it's not your traditional institution.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not the kind, it certainly has a very marked difference than most of the institutions I worked at when I was in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we're, 13,000 plus students. Um, about half of our undergraduates are first generation students, somewhere between 48 and 49%. Uh,
Mhm.
57% are Latino.
Mhm.
When I add the African and African American contingent, we get to the mid 80s in terms of percentage that are Black and brown students. Um, we haven't captured the data this year, but we have a high number of immigrant students. So not just first generation college students, but first generation Americans coming. We have a nice mix of transfer students, many of whom are sort of on the edge of being adult returning students. But over the last 5 years, 6 years, we've had some pretty impressive numbers, sort of for us breaking numbers of high school students going directly from high school to us as opposed to transferring. Now that transfer population is still a massive and important part of who we are, but we've been clipping along pretty well with our partnerships, both in the with the Bronx high schools, but also in up into Westchester and even across to the northern part of Manhattan and the northern part of Queens. So it's an incredibly diverse and interesting group of students. Socioeconomically, we're not obviously catering to a rich population, and so we work hard at leveraging the resources we have to provide financial aid. If they come from the state, if there are system programs, our own fundraising and philanthropy efforts. And at the same time, we look for opportunities to engage our students in experiential learning opportunities, both on campus and off campus, that can also help them defray their costs by putting a little coin in their pockets. I mean, we've spent a lot of time both at Lehman and CUNY talking about paid internships. Um, it's the kind of student population, to be quite honest, as a first generation American and a first generation college student, that you take a lot of pride in leading. Because as I tell some of the junior folks on staff who sometimes walk out of campus a little bit down at the mouth because it wasn't a perfect day, I said,
Yeah.
"Did you have an average day?" Well, yeah. And did you make a difference in some students? Yes. And walk away with your heads up, because an average day here means that we're impacting students who most of higher ed in most parts of the United States might have said you don't belong. And you've helped carry them on to the next day of their journey to college success. So not every day is going to be perfect. Not every day is going to be filled with wins. But understand, just having a normal day, you are making a heck of a difference when you look at the risk factors that our students bring to campus and the fact that you've helped them persist yet again. And sometimes the younger folks that work in our profession, they spend too much time counting wins and losses. And it's like, if you say you lost 7 out of 10 times, you might walk away campus thinking if you're a loser. But if you look to the south of us and you see Yankee Stadium and you realize that if you hit 3 out of 10 times, you'd have a $25 million contract. So you got to keep it in context and also understand that's not how we measure necessarily success. We measure it by the retention of our students writ large. So you're one part of it. And we measure it by the outcomes that our students derive. And, we've got a lot of third party verification that what we're doing through our programs and through our people is making a significant positive difference. So I like to kid my boss, our chancellor, Felix Matos Rodriguez. And, there were a number of jobs open the year that I came here. And whenever we see each other, I'm like, hey, I just want to thank you again for letting me be the president at Lehman. And he's like, why do you say that? And I said, because it's the best presidency in the system, right? It's the one where resources and students and mission and purpose line up in a very easy way, um, and a very constructive way. So it's a pleasure to work with our students.
Oh man, that's such a powerful statement. Talking about that junior employer's day and talking about almost like the mindset. You want to switch their mindset, right? It's like look at it in a different way of how it's still a win because you have to know your students. You got to know the population you're dealing with. And that's so important in the day-to-day work that you do. So I absolutely love that. And you mentioned the Bronx high schools. I know you have something, partnership with them. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's super interesting to me.
Yeah, so we've been looking at different partnerships over the last probably 3 to 4 years and trying to expand them. And one of the ways that you can get students engaged in college at the high school level is through dual enrollment, right? And so we've been expanding our dual enrollment programs, and the most recent version of that has us working with high schools and say, look, if you take X amount of credits and you do well, and you are prepared to matriculate, you will, in addition to getting those college credits and that collegiate experience, you'll get a $500 scholarship. Is that going to make or break people? I don't know that it's going to make or break, but what it does with a young person who may even be just in their junior year of high school is it reinforces through the courses that they can achieve at a collegiate level, that they have some sense of what the expectations are at college, that they clearly have an affinity and an experience with Lehman, whether they take class on our campus, they take the class at their high school, or they take the class online. And then, in a sense, the $500, a little scholarship, is the icing on the cake. And it changes the dynamic, right? Because that we may be talking to students who already had in their minds they're going to go to college. So now they got to decide. And okay, that's part of the marketing. But what's even more valuable to us is maybe we've enticed a kid who wasn't sure if her or his journey was going to include a college experience to start thinking about that college experience. And we know what the data says, at least for Lehman graduates, that when you graduate, if you get that college experience successfully, socioeconomically, you're going to rise pretty rapidly, and you're going to have a career trajectory. So we know how important that can be for that person's social development and economic development, and how impactful that is for their family. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of us who come from immigrant families, we share the burden as a family about how we move forward. And so I think as many of these as we could possibly leverage, I would like to think that what we're doing is reinforcing the notion of college possible, right? That it is within my financial reach, but equally valuable, to their own experience and their own confidence, that they can compete, that this is not something to be intimidated, that this is not a scary environment, that you have the chops, that you're smart enough and you work hard enough that you can succeed in college. And maybe some of these young people, because they don't come from families that have a college experience, they don't have that reinforcement. They don't innately have that confidence. If we can help put some of that into them, I consider that a win. It's a bigger win if they come to Lehman, but really we want them to think of college as not just a possibility, but as a certainty, right? I mean, that's what we're aiming towards.
That is beautiful. And yeah, I remember first generation myself and being in high school. I didn't even know what college was, man. I was like, what? Like I had a teacher say, you should go to college. What is that? I have no idea. My family didn't know. My grandma didn't go to a day of school. So I get that. I totally get that. So I love these types of initiatives. So it brings me to my next question. Tell me more initiatives because I think you've been there over 4 years now, more
Yeah.
initiatives that maybe you have brought on that you kind of took on because they were there that just make you proud, tú tienes como un orgullo de ello,
Yeah.
you're proud. That you're just
I mean,
proud of it, Tell me some of
there,
that
there,
stuff.
there's two very different ones. So I inherited a campus that was already working towards these experiential learning opportunities and tying paid internships into what they're doing in the classroom. Um, in some ways, as to give students the experience and to socialize them into a career path for their job coming out of college. Um, because we have a team that is so good at it, we've gotten, various kinds of investments, and we've been one of the leading schools for CUNY and various initiatives. The most recent one that our chancellor just sort of formally announced this week in the State of CUNY address is the CUNY Beyond initiative. And so
Mm.
this is an initiative that will encourage, and we're one of the two lead institutions that are already started. We'll be joined by two more in January. But the idea is we begin talking to students about what their career goals are and how to achieve them, how to work towards them from the moment they step on campus. So it begins with orientation. It goes through advising. It's embedded in their general education. It's certainly embedded in the courses in their major. And then hopefully it ought to culminate in some sort of internship experience before they go. And we've seen pretty good results that internship then leads into a job. It's not quite a 360 experience, but boy, it gets pretty close to a 360 experience. I think we have a lot of hope for that. It might feel, such an initiative might feel new, if you will, to different kinds of universities. To us, it feels like the next logical step with what we were doing. And so we're very pragmatic about it. Obviously, we need to expand our partnerships and our relationships with organizations that would hire our students, both on the profit sector and the nonprofit sector. But it certainly complements the students that we have in nursing and education and social work that have a different experiential learning that's part of its experience. And that's the internship or the practicum experience. And put together, we should see, pretty soon, pretty close to 100% of our students having one of these experiences before they graduate. But also having it intentionally, having them be primed to think about why they're doing this and how it impacts them and what are they trying to get out of it, which is also important because they have to feel like they have some control of their journey as well. I think the other thing that we're just starting that I have a lot of hope for, because I think it benefits us as a campus, but I think it benefits the Bronx. And that is our telehealth counseling center. So we saw mental health, both with our students and in the Bronx, as being a significant issue during COVID and even coming out of COVID. Some of those things have gone away a little bit as the fear of COVID recedes. It somehow seems so far away back there. And yet there's this sort of internal fear that the next one is right in front of us too, right? They're quickly moving towards, hopefully not. And we have counseling students at the undergrad and grad level in the counseling program in social work, psychology. And so a couple of the deans and the faculty got together and said, why don't we set up this telehealth counseling center? It's a practical experience for our students. They're supervised by our faculty and clinicians. But it can be a way of providing mental health support, not just to our students, but it's open to the Bronx population. And we offer bilingual options in that as well. I'm proud of that because it reinforces what I said earlier, right? That we're of the Bronx, by the Bronx, for the Bronx. And so when we have these opportunities where we see a need in the community, and we're able to leverage what we do as an institution of higher education, both in terms of teaching and learning, but also research and discovery and application, it allows us to pull those two things together and do what we're supposed to do, but also to do it in such a way that it benefits the Bronx. And I think that's I think that's a responsibility we have to the Bronx, and I think it's a vital thing for our students to see how they pursue their career goals, and yet still feel deeply connected and helpful to the communities that they came from.
Yeah,
You used
that
that
yeah.
word earlier, orgullo. Exactly,
Yeah,
right? They walk out with
yeah,
a sense of pride. I made a difference, right?
yeah. Oh my God, you're speaking my language there, Fernando. I absolutely love this, and it just makes me think about how you're so embedded in the community, and then another question pops into mind. It's like I can imagine. I know a president's so busy. You have so much going on, What is it like for you? What's a week like? Well, what's your next week like? What do you got going on? And how do you prepare for that? I mean, you're meeting with there's I always say a college president is like a mayor. I mean, you have so many constituents that you're working with, right?
Right.
So I'm just curious, like, how do you process? How do you get ready? Obviously, you mentioned your team, which is awesome. That helps a lot. But for you as an individual, I mean, you must be out in the community all the time talking. I saw that you watched the movie with the Student Government Association. You're hanging out, watching the Jets lose. So, so, so tell me about
So
all that. I'm just,
the challenge, I mean, by the time you get to this point, you realize that your time is no longer your time. And there's a
yeah,
by presidents don't last 20 years anymore, right?
yeah,
It used to be the norm. I think now the average is like 5.5, 6 years.
mhm, yeah,
In part because you get burned out. That's a big issue. In part, you run out of ideas, and that's a huge issue, which is why I'm so grateful I've got the team around me because it's like, anybody got a great idea? You got a great idea. Let's ride that one. Let's, that all the great ideas don't have to come from me. And it's something I learned watching other presidents use their cabinets because there is a sense that the president should be the source of everything great. No, the president is an architect, yeah, but at the same time, we're a construction worker, right?
mm,
Our job sometimes is to lead from the front, but sometimes it's to lead from the back and provide service to those people, be they staff or faculty or one of the executive members of cabinet, and let them lead. And so that's why I'm so pleased with the group of people we had. I mean, look, that telehealth counseling center that I just waxed on about, that wasn't my idea. It was a great idea that came from faculty and two deans. Um, and now it's my job. You talk about what I spend my time. Now it's my job to talk about it and go fundraise for it. Go talk to legislators. Go talk to private donors. And I do spend a lot of my time doing that. And there are seasons, right? So I'm moving into a season where we're doing a capital campaign. Um, so I'm working with the development team to do fundraising at the same time. We're moving into that 4 or 5 month period where we spend a lot of time lobbying for the next legislative cycle, both at the state and the local level. I throw feds in there, but I don't know what that's going to look like right now. There's no there to go to in DC. We'll see after Thanksgiving, I guess. So yeah, I do spend. I mean, yesterday I was double booked in the evening. A mayor's event over the top of a governor's event, and the mayor's event because of the weather went late, and it's like I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it to the governor's event. But I knew I had to be at the mayor's event because one of our programs, the Mexican Studies Institute, was getting a citation from the mayor on a day where he was celebrating, the Mexican community in New York and Dia de Muertos, and so it was important for me to be there with our team and obviously to accept on behalf of the team. But the only challenge is really, can I be in two places at the same time, or can I get from one place to the other in time? And sometimes you look at the calendar and it's like, the laws of physics do not allow me to do that. So you try to figure it out. And then honestly, there are times where you're selfish. So yes, I did meet with student government back in September. They had an event. I went to the event on a Friday afternoon. We talked about, and one of the SGA leaders said, I wish we could engage. And I just sort of said it off the top of my head. I'm like, well, the Jets and the Giants got to have a Monday night football game or Thursday night football game at some. 2 weeks later, within 2 weeks, we had it all set up, right? And we've never done that before. And people say, we thought 100 people are going to come up. They didn't come. It's not about how many people came out. It was about building community. And so, we sat there, it was a New York team. It didn't do so well. But we enjoyed it. As we were waiting for things, I took the mic and we just did a impromptu. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer? Throw them out there. Not quite no holds barred, but let's be authentic and honest with each other. I don't have a script. There's no plants in the audience. Just ask your questions. I did promise that if the Yankees made the World Series, we would have another one. That's not going to happen. So probably in the spring semester, we're going to have to build it around, I don't know, the Knicks or I don't know how people feel about the Rangers and the Islanders and the Devils, but usually the Knicks can bring people together. But those are the most rewarding because that's me hanging out with the students. And as much as I love my faculty and staff colleagues, and my CUNY colleagues, I didn't leave California for the Midwest to get a PhD because I hated students, right? Quite the opposite. I love being a professor. I loved engaging with students. And so if the Student Government Association has an opportunity and I can fit it in my calendar, I'm going to figure out a way to be there.
I love that. And it just makes me laugh because you can't be at two places at once. So I think about, the rave now is these digital twins. I don't know if you're hearing about it. A lot of digital twins that which obviously leads me to AI, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about that right now. First,
Yeah.
how are you using AI yourself personally? And then what's going on at Lehman College when it comes to AI, students, academic integrity, staff, faculty, all that good stuff? Tell us about the AI story. Today's episode is sponsored by Yellow Funding, an innovative college financing platform built for today's students and schools. As federal lending pulls back and private loans fall short, too many students are forced to pause or abandon their degrees. Yellow steps in and offers income-based financing to close that last mile funding gap, helping students stay enrolled. Yellow funds tuition and living expenses in exchange for a capped share of future income, aligning affordability with real career outcomes. For deans and financial aid leaders focused on access, persistence, and enrollment stability, Yellow offers a new tool to support student success. Learn more at yellowfunding.com. That's YELO funding.com.
So I'm going to start with the notion of I'm old enough that I'm uncomfortable with AI. Okay.
Hmm.
But I'm also aware enough to know it's already happening. So if we bury our heads in the sand, students are going to be using it, but they may be using it in ways that aren't going to help them be successful later on, right? And so I don't want them to cut corners and stop the learning. I want them to use it as a tool to enhance their learning. At the same time, I also want them to understand the ethics around it and the value it could have in its application beyond the university. And so do I use it? Yeah, in my office, sometimes. And we're still fiddling around with it rather than one of us humans drafting a speech. We put in the parameters in AI and then it spits it back at me and then I clean it up because and it's sometimes shocking how good the draft is. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't humanize. It doesn't understand my voice. It understands a speech, but it doesn't understand my delivery. It doesn't really have a sense of humor, so I've got to drop in a joke or two. It's not the best transitions between ideas and sentences. And the one thing that AI doesn't understand as a machine is that you don't run out of breath when you're reading silently, but if you're speaking, you can run
Hmm.
out of breath. And sometimes when you run out of breath, your voice tails off at the end of a sentence or a paragraph. But the fact of the matter is you've written a speech so that it actually powers up at the end of a sentence or a paragraph. So you have to sometimes restructure it so that it fits your capabilities, your personalities, and your intent. But yeah, it is a little bit shocking. Beyond that, I personally haven't done too much with it. I've done some sort of searching and researching to find facts and you know, sure. I personally wouldn't write a scholarly paper at this point, but that's because I don't understand all the tools that are associated with it. Or if I do, I'm not fully comfortable with them. On campus, we have a number of people working on AI, and our provost, Jorge Silva Portes, has been not simply a proponent of AI, but a proponent of understanding how AI is integrated into our teaching, our research, our creativity, our discovery. And so he has tried to secure grants to help with the faculty development. He has worked with our teaching excellence center to build the capacity of our faculty to use it in ethical and responsible ways. Um, and the three CUNY schools in the Bronx who get together regularly around technology. At least once a year, we have a sort of a Bronx conference. This has been a predominant conversation in the last 2 or 3 years, and it will likely stay that way for a few more years until we start integrating it. It's not a fair analogy, but the last time I was a full-time teacher was about 2003, 2004. Excuse me, 2000, 2001. I still taught regularly all the way for another decade, 1 to 2 classes a year. In those days, if I were to go to some of my colleagues and say, "Oh, I'm using Wikipedia in my class," they would have scoffed at me. We don't scoff at Wikipedia anymore, do we? So what it was, particularly as a community developed tool that gets edited, and what it has become, we could have anticipated as a possibility, but it certainly wasn't guaranteed. But through refinement and time, it has become a useful tool. It may not be a valued tool, and I get that, but it's become a useful tool. Um, yeah, AI is that on steroids, obviously. So it's an exponential growth. But I think if marshaled in the educational sector, it could revitalize how we teach, right? It could put an end to the notion of the sage on the stage, and really give us 3 dimensions as we go to active learning or distributed learning models in the classroom. So instead of just lectures where we're talking about vocabulary and concepts, we're now meeting to discuss how those concepts work and how to apply them and how to do case studies, and how to make them relevant. So I have hopes for AI, but I'm also a professor of popular culture and media. So I watched all those science fiction movies from the 1990s and 2000s. So there's a piece of me that says this ends with Will Smith chasing a robot down a street. You know what I mean?
I feel the same way, man. I grew up in the 80s too, man. So that's great. I love that. All right, so I know you are involved in a lot of associations, and you're in the CUNY system, so there are a lot of college presidents there. So you hang out with a lot of different college presidents, not just within the CUNY system, but outside too. So I know you can't tell us all the details, but I'm just curious. What do you all talk about when you're hanging out? No microphones, no nothing. Tell us, let's like what keeps you up at night? What do you think? What do you want to see around the corner? Like what I'm just curious. Can you share anything?
Well, for those that I'm actually friends with, right? I am professionally and related to and collegial with a whole lot of folks, but there are a number of who I think we consider each other friends. I think the first thing we ask each other is we shake hands
Yeah.
and you just take a step back and you're like, "You all right? You all right? You
Check in.
about anything before the stuff starts? You good, right?" Because the last 4 or 5 years, we had COVID and we navigated that, and most of us navigated it pretty well. And then, just as we were getting our feet, particularly in places like New York City, the unfortunate events in the Middle East and Gaza happened, and that roiled the campuses. And maybe it didn't impact campuses in places like, I don't know, Oklahoma or South Dakota the way it would in New York City, but
Yeah.
for those of us in the urban Northeast, at least, and other urban centers. I mean, we saw a lot of it in Los Angeles as well. That was a complicated period, um, and we started to come out of that, and then we have the election last year, and that's fine. The election is what the election is, but
Yeah.
as a matter of a menu of policies that were then offered up after February 1. Any number of those have really been challenging, right? So the shutdown right now obviously is challenging. The attack on our research infrastructure, that has been challenging and still a lot of uncertainty. For a lot of campuses, the whole thing about international students and how internationals come and when they will come here is huge culturally and financially. For a school like us, not as great, but the flip side of that is there are disciplines all over this country where if it wasn't because of PhDs who were international students who need to be on a visa, who need to get a green card, it would be difficult for us to staff up. Could happen in nursing, but certainly in the sciences, computer science, mathematics, any number of disciplines in business. Without those international scholars, it is difficult to see us sustaining, let alone growing, the programmatic needs that frankly the country relies upon us to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are all things that are challenging, and they challenge us in different flavors at different intensities, but they are certainly challenging. And then the underlayment of all of that is how stable is state funding for those of us in public school. For those of us in the Midwest and the Northeast, the shift in populations, what does that mean to your financial stability and viability? And certainly, any number of our colleagues that work in small tuition dependent private schools, we've seen any number of them close just in the last 3 years, right? So they survived COVID only to get hammered by these other conditions. And they've either been consolidated into bigger schools that have sort of merged them or they closed shop. And that's devastating to the employees. It's harmful to higher ed, but think about what it does economically to the communities that those colleges are in, right? Those students that come to those college, a large percent of them are bringing economic impact with them. And now those students aren't there. Those employees are creating economic impact simply by living there. Now they've got to move and find jobs. The institution, by buying goods and services, creating economic impact. It could be devastating to small communities. And I think we've seen a little bit of that in central and northern New York. Certainly we've seen it in other parts of the country. Those are the things that keep us up.
Yeah.
And some of us sleep better than others, but all of us don't sleep as well as we used to.
I appreciate you telling us that, because you summed it up pretty well. There's a lot going on in higher ed today. So it's super interesting to hear your perspective, and I really appreciate that. So let's get down to the last question,
Sure.
Fernando. This is the one. This is the money ball. This is it. What do you see as the future of higher education?
I can conceive that there will be fewer schools than there are now, even if there are more students net in the future. Part of that is that we've figured out distributed learning. A lot of us have, through COVID, developed a lot of capacity and skill, technologically and pedagogically, to do online education or do hybrid education. So that means you might need less bricks and mortar. The flip side of that is the kinds of bricks and mortar you need are going to potentially be more expensive, because you need to recreate learning environments that are also associated with the work environments that people are going to move towards. So you need state-of-the-art labs, you need state-of-the-art computer labs, you need state-of-the-art nursing education or other health profession education spaces. I think the assault on higher education comes and goes, and it's certainly been a thematic over the last 45, 50 years. The fact of the matter is, you don't have to go to college to have a career. And you may not have to go to college to make a decent living. But college is, and this notion that college used to promise, I mean, I graduated college in 1988. I don't recall anybody promising me anything. I recall people telling me college is going to open doors for you. Whether or not you go through the door, pick the right door, that's on you. But college is going to open doors. I still think that's true. I think that's more true than other places. But no, you don't have to go to college. You can get a job in the trades. You can, leverage your own innate skills, perhaps in sales and run your own business or do B2B sales, all of that. But be sure you have those skills, right? Be sure you have that personality. Be sure you want to work that hard. I'm a college president, so arguably at 59, I am entering my high income years. If you ask somebody who's worked in the trades by 59, it is conceivable that their shoulders are shot, their knees are shot. Going to work is a painful act. If they can go to work, they're already looking at retirement, which is great if you have the resources to retire. But for a lot of people, that means your income is going down. So yeah, okay, great. You don't have to go to college to get a job, but I have not a lot, but I have done manual labor in my life. I would not want to do that manual labor at 59, right? I would not want to sling a 60-pound bag of cement and hump it 50 yards so that we can mix it to put a floor together in the backyard, right? And I don't have to worry about that as a college president. Every once in a while, I get a paper cut. And it's very painful, but it's not the same as, lifting hundreds of pounds a day and the wear and tear that it puts on your knees, your hips, your shoulders. let alone working in the elements. And so, I never tell somebody who says college is not for me, that's great. But I will ask them, where do you want to be 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? And what is the best way? And I don't mean just financially, but quality of life, opportunities, um, experiences, work-life balance, even. How do you get from here to there? And if college is not for you when you do that sort of equation development, that's great, but don't cast it. And I think we're going to come back to a place where people feel like, I need some sort of education. Because the thing is, when the economy is going great, they'll hire anybody who's got some skills. But when the economy gets tight, what happens? We revert back to, what's your education? What's your degree in? How many years experience? And show me what you got. And show me what you got is important. But those other two or three things, they actually serve as the filters that the already automated HR systems use for big corporations to kick. I mean, there are some historically that have said, you got a baccalaureate degree, but it's not from the right school, right? We're not even going to look at you. And why do they do that? Because they can. Because they can.
Mhm.
So if you're not going to put yourself in a place where you can be competitive in that environment, you're going to have choices, but they're not going to be as great and they're not going to be as many. I think there's another thing for society. Having educated people is a good thing for society. Having people who can maturely, critically think, work through conflict, engage people, work in groups, process information, that's a good thing for people. That's a good thing for society. And we see in communities where you don't have a preponderance of that, how complicated things get very quickly. I mean, I'm a public speaking teacher, so I always joke, people talk about the things that scare you the most, right? Death, uh, an illness, you know, Michael Myers, whatever scares you. But public speaking for generations has always been near the top. You know what we teach in college? Public speaking. And who teaches you public speaking? Experts. And how do they do it? They have you go through exercises and they give you tools. And how do you learn from it? Well, they give you feedback and they videotape and they walk through the videotape with you. They coach you through it. I mean, if you think you're going to get to a world where you don't have to communicate with people, fantastic. But we are in an information-based and service economy. It is predicated on good interactions. I don't think that's fundamentally going to change. It may get altered a little bit, but it's not fundamentally going to disappear. And so I chuckle at people who say, I have this fear and it keeps me moving ahead. And it's like, well, geez Louise, I know a place where you can learn how to do that really well. It's called college. And people might make fun of communication studies majors, but guess what? We do pretty well in the end. You know why? Because we know how to deal with human beings pretty effectively. And I'm not saying every student maximizes their opportunities. College is still that place that affords you that opportunity. And the doors that it opens are multiple. There's not one door you go through. There's several doors, that you can choose from. And so I'm always a big proponent of college without saying it solves out every problem. It doesn't solve every problem. It never solved every problem. I don't know where we came up with this mythology that somehow people in universities said that. I don't ever recall anybody saying that. But they did say, hey, if you learn this, here are the jobs that you could apply for. Here are the career paths you could possibly go for. And there were many of them. And I thought, I have done manual labor, and this, sitting in front of a computer and doing this and using my mind, is a lot better than that. That made me tired and it hurt. And I was 19 and it hurt. Imagine if 39, 49, college didn't. And so if somebody tells me college not for them, I shrug and say, if you've made that decision, that's fine. But I always ask people to think about, where do you envision yourself 25, 30 years from now?
Mic drop. That was awesome, Fernando. So appreciate your insights. This has been a fantastic conversation. I cannot thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, he is your guest today. He is the one, the only, Dr. Fernando Delgado, president at Lehman College. Fernando, thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you, Elvin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just had out. Today's episode is sponsored by Yellow Funding. Every year, students drop out of college, not because of academics, but because they hit a funding wall. As federal lending grows more limited and private loans remain inaccessible for many families, more students are hitting a financial wall mid-year. Yellow provides financing when traditional options fall short. By closing that last mile affordability gap, Yellow helps colleges improve retention and keep students on the path to graduation. Learn more at yellowfunding.com. That's YELO funding.com.